Do you know there was a time that women who were fathers were arrested? Do you know that? So while history is packed with massive, undeniable patriarchies, anthropologists, listen, have found fewer examples of strict mirror image matriarchy. In many traditional patriarchal societies, a massive emphasis was placed on a woman being a virgin before marriage, often tied to a dowry, payment from the bride's family to the groom's family. This wasn't just about morality. It was, before patriarchy, there was what? Matrilineal lineage, following the mother's line. So in many pre-patriarchal and egalitarian societies, family lines were tracked through the mother and not the father. This is called, by the end of this episode, you are going to understand the exact biological and technological trap that rewrote human marriage, money, and laws forever.
If you're here right now, you already know something most people your age don't. That the conversation inside your head matters. That who you are becoming is more important than what you are achieving. And that the right words at the right time can change everything. You are listening to The Morning Gear. I am Divine Daniel, the Gen Z educator. Welcome back if you've been here before. And if you're new here, you are right on time. I need 3 things from you before we start. 1. Subscribe or follow. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. Every subscription tells the algorithm that this podcast deserves to reach more people. And there are people in Nigeria, in Africa, across the world who needs this conversation. Help me get it to them. 2. Like this episode. 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. The like button on YouTube. It costs you nothing, but it means everything to me. 3. Drop a comment. Anywhere. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me what you are going through right now. This isn't a broadcast, it's a conversation, and I actually read what you write. The Morning Gear is currently heard in 19 countries, and it grows because people like you decide it's worth sharing. I am glad you are here, and I look forward to having you here over and over and over again. Now, let's get into it.
If you ask the average person on the street why are modern dating, family dynamics, and gender roles feel so chaotic right now, they'll almost give you the exact same word: patriarchy. We are told it's a malicious system invented by men who just woke up one day, hated women, and decided to oppress them. We are told it's the root of all modern toxicity. But what if I told you that almost everything you know about how patriarchy started is dead wrong? What if I told you it wasn't a choice made out of hatred, but a survival technology forced upon us by climate change and ancient farming tools? See, this isn't going to be your typical surface level internet debate where men and women just yell at each other. We are going to go into the actual roots. Because if you're a woman listening to this, you've probably felt the lingering hangovers of a system that historically erased your financial and legal independence. And if you're a man listening to this, you are likely feeling the weight of a society that demands you fulfill traditional expectations while simultaneously demonizing your very existence. Both sides are frustrated, but nobody is actually looking at the history. By the end of this episode, you are going to understand the exact biological and technological trap that rewrote human marriage, money, and laws forever. You are going to see how a system built for absolute protection mutated over thousands of years into absolute restriction. And most importantly, we are going to lay the groundwork to answer a massive, uncomfortable question. Has the way we fought the system actually broken our society? I'm literally opening up the anthropological records and the historical legal codes right now as we speak, because I wanted to know the truth for myself. I wanted to actually know the truth and not just think that I know the truth. I wanted to stop repeating the mainstream talking points and actually look at the data. So we are going to go back in time together and we are going to do real-time research. Like I'll be researching it now, asking questions, and I'm going to be reading what my responses are to you. And we are going to unravel the roots and strip away the politics. So like I initially said, I'm going to do real-time research on Google Gemini, and we are going to discuss what patriarchy actually is, not what we think we know it is. So you might be wondering, why is the Morning Gear podcast taking the shift? Initially, this is one of the niches of this podcast. We are talking about self-improvement. We are talking about, mindset, mental health. But one thing I'm so passionate about is not agreeing to social conformity. I feel a lot of individuals, we just grew up, we're just born into this world, and a lot of things we do, we never ask questions. Why is it like this? Why can't it be like this? Why is it like this? Why are we following it? We are not asking questions. And if you know me very well, you know that I am an anti-social conformity person. So basically, I am very, very passionate about such topics. And I've been having it in my mind to discuss patriarchy, but I don't know. I just decided to do it today. And you know, one episode is too small to unravel everything about patriarchy. But like I said, we are going to have the baseline. I'm talking about baseline to answer the real question, whether the way it is being fought against, is it actually doing us more harm or more good? So let's ask Gemini. So I went ahead to ask Gemini, let's discuss patriarchy. What exactly is patriarchy? Let's say you're explaining to someone who has constantly heard the word, but don't really understand the word patriarchy. Also, how was the word patriarchy formed? Like, why is it called patriarchy? And let's see what it says. This is the response of what Google Gemini gave me. If you strip away all the modern political noise, the internet arguments, the buzzwords, please, I need you to pay attention so like we understand this together, this kind of a conversation, right? And I want you to get the absolute best of what we are discussing. So I'm starting again. If you strip away all the modern political noise, the internet arguments, and the buzzwords, patriarchy is actually a very straightforward concept. To explain it to someone who hears it all the time, but doesn't really get it, think of it as a society structured like an old school family business where the grandfather or father holds the ultimate signing authority. In a patriarchal system, the primary positions of power, government leadership, moral authority, social privilege, and control of property are overwhelmingly held by men. It doesn't mean every single man is rich and powerful, but it means the rules of the game and the institutions are managed by only men. And these rules are passed down from fathers to son. I hope you understand. So in a patriarchal system, men are the primary dictators of how the rules are set and who it affects. And this is like passed down from fathers to son and the cycle continues. So that is what patriarchy means, right? Now, how was the word formed? The reason it is called patriarchy comes down to its ancient Greek roots. It's a combination of two words. Now, you might wonder why I'm asking this question. I'm someone who likes to understand things like in-depthly. So when I'm making arguments with people, I'm not making assumptions, but I'm speaking from what I already know. Now, the reason this is called patriarchy comes down to its ancient Greek roots. It is a combination of two words, patria, which means father, and archein, which means to rule. I'm not sure I got the pronunciations well, but the archein is spelled Archein, which means to rule. So literally, patriarchy means the rule of the father. Literally, like in simple terms, it just means the rule of the father. Historically, it wasn't just about men dominating women in general. It was specifically about the senior male patriarch having total legal and economic authority over the entire household, which included younger men, women, children, and servants. Over thousands of years, that household structure scaled up to become the blueprint of how we ran empires, religions, and modern government. Now, I went ahead to ask, I know there's a lot of things in your mind now, but at this point, what was in my mind? Initially, I thought that patriarchy started from the Bible, but I feel we are going to know if it actually started from the Bible or not from this conversation. But now what I asked was, so if it was vice versa, like the women in charge of the rules and authority, what would it be called? I know the answer to this question already, but I also want to gain knowledge about it. That's why I'm asking. And I also want you to gain knowledge about it so we don't like assume. So if you flipped the response, if you flipped the script and women held the ultimate authority, the system will be called matriarchy. Just like the patriarchy, the word is built from ancient Greek roots. One, mater, which means mother, and archein, which means to rule. So literally, matriarchy means the rule of the mother. In a true matriarchal society, leadership, moral authority, and political power and control of property are held by women. Along with that, you often see a system that is matrilineal, meaning family lineage, names, and inheritance are passed down from mothers to daughters rather than fathers to son. So while history is packed with massive, undeniable patriarchies, anthropologists, listen, have found fewer examples of strict mirror image matriarchy. So I went ahead to ask, give me examples of things done because of patriarchy. This is going to be a long conversation, but I want you to please learn as we go in. I know what the examples are, but I feel to facilitate better understanding, we should also see examples of things done because of patriarchy. Now, the response. When you look at history and how societies developed, you can see the direct footprints of patriarchy in our society, in our traditions, and even in our everyday language. Because the system was built on the rule of the father and protecting the male lineage, specific practices were created to maintain the structure. And here are some of the most clear, concrete examples. The patronymic surnames. The most common example is that when people get married, the woman traditionally takes the man's last name, and any children born take the father's surname. Like you now, you were born, your father's surname or his father's surname is your surname. For me, my surname is Daniel. That's my grandfather's English name. So that is patriarchy. So historically, this wasn't just a romantic gesture, it was a legal tracker. It showed exactly which male household or lineage the woman and children belonged to for inheritance purposes. For inheritance purposes, okay. 2. Historic property and inheritance law. For centuries, across various cultures, women were legally barred from owning land and inheriting wealth. Women, they suffer. Honestly, if a wealthy man died and only had daughters, his estate wouldn't go to them. It would go to his closest male relative, probably his brother or his nephew or his cousin that is a male. This system was designed to keep wealth and land concentrated in male hands. These are examples of things being done because of patriarchy. Now, number 3, the traditional marriage ceremony, giving away of the bride price. Now, think about the traditional wedding format that is still common today. The father walks the bride down the aisle and physically gives her away to the groom. Historically, this symbolized the transfer of legal custody, financial responsibility, and authority over to the woman from one patriarch, the father, to the next, the husband. Do you get it? So when the father hands over his daughter to the groom, it's like a transfer of legal custody, financial responsibility from the father, who is a patriarch, to the husband, who is also a patriarch. So as a man, you are a patriarch. So now let's continue. Number 4, legal disenfranchisement. Legal disenfranchisement, that is the restriction of rights. Up until the 20th century, in many parts of the world, women couldn't vote, sign legal contracts, open bank accounts, or hold public offices because the public sphere, that is the politics and business, were considered the domain of the patriarchs, of the men. The laws explicitly restricted women to the sphere of the home, which is the private sphere, and it all continues. But let me give you the last example. Number 5, hyper focus on female chastity and dowries. In many traditional patriarchal societies, a massive emphasis was placed on a woman being a virgin before marriage, often tied to a dowry, payment from the bride's family to the groom's family. This wasn't just about morality, it was an economic assurance, because a man was passing his property to his heirs. He needs absolute 100% certainty that the children his wife bore were his biological children. So that is why there was a hyper focus on female being virgins before they marry, because the man wanted to be 100% certain that his children were his before, because he was going to pass on his inheritance to his children. So it is only wise for him to ensure that his children were his. That's why there was this societal expectation that women were to be virgins before they get married. This was done to strictly control a woman's sexuality, because that was the only way to guarantee that lineage before modern science of DNA and everything else came about. Do you get? Before science came about. So I went ahead to ask, when there was no patriarchy, how was marriages, name transfer, and the rest done? So when there was no patriarchy, how was this done? Now, the response. Before patriarchy became the global norm, Human societies were primarily nomadic, hunter, and gatherers. So when they say nomadic, that means they move from place to place. So hunter for male, gatherers for female. In those societies, life looked completely different because there was no private property, no real estate, no fences. You couldn't own land. You just lived off it. So before patriarchy became a thing, you cannot own land. You can just move to anywhere you want to stay and stay there. Probably there are trees there growing around there. You want to like harvest the fruits or, eat what is left of the land. You eat it and then you move to some other place. You cannot own something. You just lived off it. But because there was nothing to inherit, there was no need for strict control over lineage or names. That was why there was nothing like patriarchy, because there was nothing to inherit. Now, here's actually how things worked before the rule of father took over. Before patriarchy, there was what? Matrilineal lineage, following the mother's line. So in many pre-patriarchal and egalitarian societies, family lines were tracked through the mother and not the father. This is called matrilines. Think about it logically from an ancient perspective. Before modern science, listen, a child's father could be questioned, but the mother was an absolute certainty because she gave birth. They literally saw her giving birth, but they cannot tell who is the father of the child. Do you get? You saw the baby come out from her. Therefore, children belong to the mother's clan or tribe. So because of that, the children became the belongings of the mother's clan or tribe. They call it clan or tribe. So the names, the tribal identities and whatever small personal belongings existed were passed from their mothers to their children or from their maternal uncles to nephews. So this was how the system was before patriarchy existed. 2. Matrilocal residence, men moving into women's camp. So, instead of a woman being given away to a man's family, many Asian societies practice what we call matrilocal marriage. When two people partnered up, the man would leave his birth family and move into the tent camp or village of the woman's family, and the woman stayed surrounded by her mothers, sisters, and aunts. Now, this gave women massive social protection and leverage. So, if a man became lazy or abusive or toxic, the woman's family was right there to kick him out of the camp. You get? So before patriarchy actually existed, let's say that was actually happening in the modern society today, how would that look like? With the way women glorify rich men, would that still work? But let's continue. Now, 3, marriage as an equal partnership or fluid alliance. So marriage as a rigid lifelong legal contract where a woman become a property didn't exist. Marriage partnership was more fluid and based on mutual survival and cooperation. So before patriarchy, partnership was much fluid and based on mutual survival and cooperation. There was no dowries. There were no payouts or buying of bride because women are seen as major economic producers. So they gather the majority of the tribe's daily food supply. They have what they call, that time I don't think they have nuclear family. They only have what we call clan or tribe. But women are the majority, are the ones involved with gathering the tribe's daily food supply. So I feel they were actively involved in gathering food supply. They don't farm. Now, why is it nomadic? Because they just eat what nature has given to them. That's it. So they just go out and probably see mango here, they pluck the mango. They see apple here, they plug it and they bring it. So that is how they survive. Why men were hunters? They hunt for meat. That is how the system was, right? So now the fluid separation. In that same system, if a partnership wasn't working, it was dissolved easily without legal warfare. Since the concept of illegitimate children did not exist, every child was simply a valuable member of the society or the community. And if there was a divorce, it did not ruin a woman's child standing or leave her destitute, right? Number 4, before patriarchy, what happened? The tribal village parenting style. The husband, wife, and kids had not been invented yet. Children were raised communally by the whole tribe. The pressure wasn't on a single father to provide or a single mother to nurture. The group shared everything. They were a clan. So before patriarchy, marriage wasn't about a man acquiring a wife and an heir. It was about 2 individuals forming an alliance to help their own tribe survive, with the women remaining the anchor of the family line. This was before what? Patriarchy. Now, after reading all this, I feel the question in your head would be, Since everything was going well, what brought about the actual need to own something when everything was actually all right initially? And that is exactly what I asked. This is the same question I asked. Now, the response to that is, now it said, this is the ultimate historical turning point. It is the moment humanity left the old way behind and rewrote the entire social contract. What broke the system wasn't greed waking up in humans' heart overnight. It was driven by a massive, inescapable crisis, climate change and population growth. So what brought the need to own was caused by climate change and population growth. Now, the last ice age ended around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. The last ice age ended and the planet warmed up. And for a while, everything was abundant. But as human populations grew, resources started getting stretched thin. Now, the nomadic tribe couldn't just pick up and move to a new forest whenever they ran out of wild berries or animals, because they would run straight into another tribe doing the exact thing in that same place they want to go. So now humanity hit the wall. They had two choices. Either they starve or find a way to force a small piece of land to produce more food than it naturally would. Do you get the whole concept? What actually initiated the need to own? Population and climate change. After the last ice age ended, right? Human population continued to grow. Now, because of the ice age, you can actually literally go somewhere and you see fruits and you decide to habitate in that particular area. When it is gone, you move. But as then they born children, like they were multiplying. God say go into the world and multiply. As they were multiplying, they need to actually own a piece of land and force it to naturally produce more food than it would was now the quest. So like I told you, no, there was no such thing as farming initially. There was only hunting and gathering of food. So what happened is that I told you they had two choices. They had to either choose to starve or find a way to force a small piece of land to produce more food than it naturally would. And they choose option 2, agricultural revolution. And that one choice changed everything. Now we go into the part where we talk about how farming invented the concept of ownership. Once humans cleared trees, dug up soil, planted seeds, and waited months for a harvest, the psychological and physical concept of my own, that is when he was born. Now, in the hunter-gatherer days, I explained what that means. You picked a wild apple from a tree that nature grew. It didn't belong to you until it was in your hand, right? But with farming, you spent months sweating, building fences, and protecting a plot of land. If another tribe came and ate your crops, they weren't just taking food. They were stealing your time, your hard labor, and your survival. So that is when ownership was born. Now, the shift in technology and the heavy plow. Early farming used simple sticks, but as the soil became packed, humans invented the heavy metal plow. Operating this machine required immense sustained physical upper body strength. And because of biological differences in average physical muscle mass, right, between men and women, men became the primary operators of this new critical technology. We are going somewhere. Now, the chain reaction to patriarchy. Once you need to own a land to survive, massive chain reaction happens. The land becomes capital. You now need to protect your borders. Men naturally having more physical strength on the average became the defenders, the soldiers, and the primary laborers, farmers of this capital. That's when farming was invented. Do you get? Now the problem of inheritance began. Unlike a wild forest, a farm can be passed down. A man who spent his life building a farmland wanted to ensure his sons got the land so the family could still survive. That's when inheritance began. I know you have gained something from this podcast. Please do well to share it with people. At least they should understand the whole concept of patriarchy. It was not just invented because men wanted to oppress women. It was because of the agricultural revolution that took place after the last ice age. Yeah. So number 3, the control of women. So guaranteeing that this land, or to guarantee that his land went to his actual biological children, the male landowner had to strictly control the sexuality and mobility of women. That is why virginity was in place. You have to remain a virgin before you get married, so he'll be sure that, okay, these are his children and his land is going to be passed directly to his exact children, because there was no such thing as DNAs as of that time. Do you get DNA test? Now, humanity did not invent ownership because they were bored or malicious. They invented ownership to survive a food crisis. But once you invent the concept of owning land, you inevitably create the concept of inheriting land. Do you get? And this is the exact mechanism that birthed patriarchy. So I went on to ask this question: why did this ownership stuff, why didn't it start as matriarchy? Why did it start as patriarchy? Now, the response was, this is $1 million question. If the women were the ones tracking lineage, running the camps, bringing in majority of the food during the hunter-gatherer days, why didn't they just take ownership of the farms and create a global matriarchy, right? Now, it all comes down to a brutal combination of biology, technology, and raw mechanics of ancient survival. When humanity transitioned to farming, women were hit with two massive simultaneous biological and structural disadvantage that allowed men to seize the reins of ownership. One, the muscle monopoly, the invention of the heavy plow. In the hunter-gatherer era, gathering plants required stamina, deep knowledge of nature, and mobility, areas where men and women were entirely equal. But intensive agriculture introduced a game-changing piece of technology. Clearing dense rooted land and wrestling a heavy wooden or iron plow through packed earth require massive explosive upper body strength. On a purely biological average, men possess significantly higher upper body muscle mass and bone density than women. So because men became the primary operators of the food producing technology, they automatically became the ones who managed, controlled, and eventually claimed ownership over the fields they plowed, right? Now, 2, the infant demographics boom, the birth rate trap. Now, this is the piece of puzzle that most people completely miss. So now, in the hunter-gatherer era, women spaced out their pregnancies because moving around constantly with multiple toddlers is impossible, and breastfeeding wild diets naturally suppressed fertility. So a woman might have a child once every 4 to 5 years. She was highly mobile and an active economic provider. But in the agricultural era, grain-based diets spiked fertility. More importantly, farms require labor. In an agrarian society, children are no longer extra mouths to feed. They are free from hands. So the birth rate had to explode. Women went from having a child every 5 years to being almost continuously pregnant or nursing throughout their prime years. Now, the impact of this is that right at that exact moment, land was being claimed, fenced off, and legally structured. Women were biologically sidelined by exhausting demands of constant childbirth and childcare. They were physically tied to the domestic hearth, while men were the one who went out on the borders, clearing the lands, fighting off rival tribes, and writing the new rule of ownership. Do you get? This is why it was patriarchy and not matriarchy. Number 3 reason why it was patriarchy and not matriarchy is the need for physical defense, the rise of welfare. When you have farms, it creates stored wealth, your grain silos, domestic animals, etc. If you store wealth, other people will try to steal it. So for the first time in history or human history, warfare became organized and chronic. Because men were not burdened by pregnancy and possessed the physical advantage required for ancient hand-to-hand combat, they became the warriors. So you see, the people who hold up the weapons and defend the property almost always end up owning the property. Do you get? So now, if you are to summarize all this, why it didn't end up as matriarchy is because the agricultural revolution transformed survival from a game of mobility and gathering, where women excelled, into a game of raw physical leverage, constant warfare, and intensive child production. Men monopolized the plow and sword with those two tools, and they locked down the rights to the land. So I feel, I don't know, we should have a part 2, part 3, part 4 of this episode, because I feel this is getting too long and I would want to stop here. So, in the next episode, I'll be talking about if this happened before the Bible was written or not. Why is it seen as a bad thing if it started as a result of manpower and ownership? Why is patriarchy seen as a bad thing if it was started as a result of manpower and ownership? I'll also be talking about what exactly caused the shift. Who initiated the shift? Because now people are fighting against matriarchy and patriarchy, right? Why wasn't it fought against immediately when it started? Why did women accept it? And how come it became a global thing that is widely accepted in the world? And why are women fighting against it now? Right? We'll talk about that. We'll discuss that in the next episode. And we'll also look into how exactly did they choose to fight patriarchy? How exactly did women choose to fight patriarchy? And if that way they choose to fight it is actually yielding good result. Were they successful? Was the fight successful? And is it yielding the result they wanted? Right? And a lot more. I'll just round up by saying this. Try to make research about things you think you know. I have a lot of topics like this I want to discuss. Do you know there was a time that women who were trials were arrested? Do you know that? There's a lot of things. Do you know that high heels were actually created for men and not women, right? Even though patriarchy is more of a bad thing as of now, I still feel the way women are fighting against it is not good. And in my next episode, I'm going to tell you a lot. I'm even going to bring in why gender equality is nonsense. There should not be anything like gender equality. Yes, call me anywhere. There shouldn't be any such thing as gender equality. There should be something else, but not gender equality. And because we were not actually created to be equal. Yeah, we can work towards a specific cause together, but that term equality is actually doing a whole lot harm than good in our society today. But yeah.
You just sat through this entire episode. That means something about you. It means you're not the kind of person who just cruise past the things that matter. You stop, you listen, and you think. And that is exactly the kind of person the refined Gen was built for. The refined Gen is our community, a space for people like you who are done just existing and ready to actually become. If you are not in it yet, the link is in the description. Come join us. Now, if you're someone who believes in what we are building here and you want to be part of it in a bigger way, we are open. If you want to come on as a guest and have real conversations, if you want to sponsor this podcast and get your brand in front of some of the most ambitious young minds in Africa, if you want to advertise, collaborate, or partner with us in any way, we want to hear from you. Reach out to us on Instagram at The Morning Gear or send us an email. All the contact info is in the description. This is the Morning Gear podcast and we are just getting started. I am Divine Daniel, the Gen Z educator. Don't thank me, outgrow me, and then stay refined.